Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me again today. This is Meg Bouvier. You know me as the creator of the Library of NIH grant writing courses to which your organization has subscribed. And I am coming to you today on May 18th as we creep ever closer to the June deadlines, and you're probably all as busy as I am right now. And just to remind people, if you're new to the call, you're all in listen only mode and you want to type questions in the Q&A box, and I'll be happy to answer them. If you have comments to add to any of the discussions that we're having, feel free to put those in the chat box. And I actually did get quite a few questions during the week, and so I'm going to actually dive right in. Although I see something in the chat box. Yep, just a welcome. Okay, so I'm going to dive right in with some of the things that people have asked me. And what I want to do is share my screen again. Hold on one moment, because I had a bunch of questions about selecting a study section. So I thought that what I would do is walk you through some of the decision making around that. So hang on one second. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see my screen. Okay, so among the questions I got were how to use questions about how to use CSR ART, if there was a way to look for a study section in the reporter website, how to handle potential scientific biases in a given study section, how to use the assignment request form. One of the questions I got was, what is the difference between an SRG and an IRG? There were a bunch of them related to study sections. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk you through some of these things. So if you just do an internet search on CSR ART, it will, the first thing that comes up is this assisted referral tool. And in fact, that's definitely what you want to be clicking on. It will lead you to something that looks like that. You're going to click here. Recommend study sections, and it will lead you to a search window like this. So here you are going to enter the title of your project and a draft specific aims, and then click submit. So I actually did a search ahead of time so that I could show you what a search result looks like. So this is the sort of thing that you might get after doing that kind of a search. It will list possible study sections that could be a good fit, and they're ranked by strength of match. So that's what this strong and possible mean. So these three are strong matches based on the text that you uploaded in that box, the title on the specific aims page. So these are all hyperlinked. Okay, so you want to come here to the SRG, Scientific Review Group, which is a synonym for study section, review panel. All of those things are the same thing. It's the primary review. So what you want to do is, and this is the name of it, this is the acronym. So if you click on that, it will come to look to a place like this. Typically there's a photo here. The scientific review officer is the person who runs the study section meeting. Their contact information is here. Remember that this person is distinct from the program officer. So the program officer is an employee of NIH, and that person oversees a portion of the extramural funding portfolio. The SRO is an employee of the Center for Scientific Review, and the only thing they do is run the study section meeting. That's the sum total of what they do. So your contact with the SRO should be minimal, if any. Your contact with a program officer, conversely, is pretty extensive. So here is a paragraph that describes the sorts of things that they do. This is a hyperlinked list of the reviewers. Reviewers tend to rotate off in June. Let's go back to this page. Here is a bulleted list of topics that they cover at this study section. And this is a great little feature. There are certain study sections that might have some overlap with the one that you're looking at. So like if you're looking at the description of this study section and you're thinking, you know, this is kind of right, but it's not the exact right fit that I'm looking for, you could come to these ones that are closely related and click over to those and see if any of them are a better fit for you. Okay, so let's say that you have come up with, let's say you decide that HPC is a really good fit for you. What you would next do is go over to the reporter website and do a search on it was HPC, I think, right? Yeah, HPC. So if you come to the reporter website, I'm sure you're all familiar with this. It's a searchable database of funded NIH projects. If you look at the additional search fields here and scroll down, there's one here for the study section. And what you want to do is put in the acronym. This is a hyperlinked list of funded projects that study section funded over the years. So actually what you could do is when you enter HPC here, do newly added projects only, and then run the search. And then typically what I do when I come here is I look for ones that say 01 or like 25. So this is the year of the project. So this is in its 4th year of funding. This is in its 5th year of funding. This is in its 1st year of funding. So this particular project is one that the current study section approved. Things that are in their 4th and 5th year of funding, the reviewers who approved that, many of them will have rotated off. So you may want to look at the ones that were funded more recently. The other thing I like to do is look at the ones that are in like their 25th year of funding, because that tells you something too. It tells you that this project has consistently fit this study section, and they have consistently found it to be worthy of funding over decades. So those are usually the two things that I tend to look at. Based on these two searches, using the CSR ART tool to generate your initial list with a draft aims page, and then coming in, you know, looking at the topics and looking at the roster, and narrowing that list to a couple of selections, you want to then come over to the reporter website and do this search, and then look at the projects that they've funded. And then when you've got it narrowed down to like 1 to 3 study sections, you want to talk over those possibilities with the program officer and with your trusted mentors and colleagues who may have experience with that study section. So the advantage of talking with the PO is that the PO tends to sit in on multiple study sections. And so they have a nice kind of unbiased view of multiple study sections and what the potential scientific biases might be of each one and how they might respond to your particular draft aims page. So I'm just going to look at the other questions I was asked. One of them was, the Center for Scientific Review will choose your study section, so I don't need to bother, right? I think that's patently untrue. Some program officers do recommend that you let CSR choose the study section for you. I've seen disastrous results when people allow that to happen. So I always suggest that people go through this search process and decide, make a meaningful decision using these different tools and conversations with various people, come up with 1 or 2 selections for a study section, and then make that choice in the assignment request form. You're not guaranteed to get it, but in my opinion, in my experience, I think you always get a better outcome if you make the selection yourself. I think I answered the other ones. I do also want to Oh, I didn't show you the assignment request form, but we'll look at that another time. It's just a 2-page form. Make sure you're using Forms G. You're going to make the request there in the assignment request form. Okay, another question that I had was about how do I tell if the work that I'm doing, my biospecimen work is if NIH considers that to be human subjects. So there's a bit of a misconception that floats around that if you're working with biospecimens, NIH doesn't consider it to be human subjects research. That's not necessarily true. So I want to direct you to this page. If you just do a search, NIH, is it human subjects research? This is going to be the first page you come to, definition of human subjects research. There are 4 infographics. I particularly like the last 2. This one is the types of research that are exempted, that fitted an exempted status. The one that I use the most is this one, having to do with biospecimens. So NIH does consider certain types of biospecimen research to be human subjects research. And a lot of it has to do with how de-identified the samples are. So are the subjects living? If they're not any of these things, then how de-identified are the samples? Is there somebody on your team who can re-identify the samples? It'll walk you through this flow chart to determine whether or not it's considered human subjects research when you're working with a biorepository or specimens rather than actual humans. And the reason, of course, that this is important is that if you're doing human subjects research, you're going to have to fill out a portion of the PHS human subjects and clinical trial information form. So for human subjects research that is not a clinical trial, you fill out up to and including section 3.2. And remember that anything that goes in that form does not belong in the research strategy. The information should be summarized in the research strategy, but the details reside in the form. And of course, for clinical trialists, you fill out all 5 sections of the form. So, okay, that was another question that I had. Another one that I had to do with this, the notice from Extramural Nexus, guidance for applicants preparing applications for summer 2022 due dates during the pandemic. So that would be cycle 2. That's what we're dealing with now. So it's deadlines in May, June, and July. And this says for applicants preparing applications for these deadlines, NIH recently extended their guidance that while grant, and there's a hyperlink there, that while grant applications should not include contingency or recovery plans for problems resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. In other words, when you're writing your grant application that is submitted on those deadlines, you don't have to waste space in the research strategy talking about what you would do if the pandemic affects subject recruitment. You don't have to handle that at all in the research strategy. However, investigators may address effects due to the pandemic on productivity or other scorable issues in this personal statement of the biosketch. So what do they mean by that? So what you want to do in your personal statement, let's say you have a personal statement that takes up half a page. So this is part A of the biosketch for those who are unclear. What you might do toward the bottom of it, and use a light touch, don't devote many sentences or a paragraph or more to this. 1 to 2 sentences. It's okay for you to say that due to COVID-related research interruptions, lab closures, difficulty in recruiting subjects, et cetera, our research has been slowed and our publications have been delayed. Note, however, that we have this publication in preparation. This one has been submitted. This one is in review. Give them some information about where you are, but it's okay to let them know that your productivity has been slowed because of, and it's okay to say what, if it was, the lab was closed, the campus was closed, we were unable to recruit subjects for a period of months, whatever it is, and specifically what was interrupted. typically people say publications. It slowed down our research and our publications. So so that's typically the way people would handle that. But again, I am a fan of using a very light touch here. I would not devote a lot of space to this. I would deprioritize it by putting it at the very end of the personal statement, and I would only devote 1 to 2 sentences. But it does help reviewers when they're assessing, you know, where you are in terms of your productivity, your publications, progress you might have made on a prior award like an R21 or a K would be another like non-scorable issue where your productivity might have been slowed down because of the pandemic. It's okay to let reviewers know that. That, you know, you should, that should be taken into consideration when they're considering your worthiness as a PI on this grant application. Okay, other questions that I got. I think I covered all of my infographic stuff, so I'm going to stop my share. Okay, so another question I got, people are getting their information back this week about funding. So for a lot of people, their applications have moved on to be discussed at secondary review at council. That's where the funding decision is made by council members, not your reviewers. And so I've gotten a spate of questions this week from grantees who have asked, when will I know if it's funded? Council met yesterday. I have a just-in-time request. Does that mean that I was funded? So I'll address these very briefly. You are not funded until NIH gives you the official notice that you are funded. So for example, if you have a just-in-time request, it doesn't mean anything necessarily. It means that you may be funded. But just-in-time requests are sent to applicants. Let's say an institute funds up to about 7 or 8% of their applicants. They may ask for just-in-time requests for people up to 20 percentile in their score, so that reviewers have a lot of latitude in handpicking the ones that they want to fund. So a just-in-time request simply means that your hopes are still alive, but nothing is guaranteed. Similarly, if you get requests for final budget numbers or information about human subjects or anything like that, same thing. It's hopeful if you get those requests, but it's not a done deal until you actually receive the official notice. If you are so antsy that you absolutely cannot wait to get an answer about funding, you could, after the council meeting, reach out to your program officer and ask. But even there, if they decided to fund you at council, you will be told that they will tentatively congratulate you and tell you that it's not a done deal until you receive the official notice. So that's a little bit of a pain, but that's the fact of the matter. Okay, let me just make sure we don't have any before I proceed with all of the other questions that I got. I just want to make sure we don't have any other Q&A stuff. No. Okay, so another question I got was, can you use your personal email for NIH contact in a grant application? So this is a question I've never gotten. I'm curious, I'll have to ask the person, but I'm curious as to why somebody would want to use their personal email as the contact. All I can figure is that they may be planning on switching institutions. I'm not quite sure why somebody would do that, but I don't know that it's not allowed, but I would strongly encourage you to use your organizational email, if nothing else, because your contact information is made public in the reporter website if you are funded, and I'm not sure you want your personal email out there in the universe for people to be contacting you. I would think that you would want that to be your organizational email. But having said that, I can't remember ever seeing anything, and I actually did search SF 424 to see if there was anything. I can't find anything that says that you're not allowed to do it. I'm not really sure of the wisdom of doing it because it's public. So Okay, and then another question that I got had to do with, there were actually a whole collection of questions having to do with how to write the innovation section. So there seems to be a lot of confusion around the difference between innovation and significance. So so let's talk about that first, and then I'll talk about how to write the innovation, because I had questions related to all of these things. So the problem with significance and innovation is that they don't have a ready corollary in publications. So the approach section looks a lot like a publication. You talk about you're going to give some background information, you're going to give your methods, you're going to talk about your expected results rather than your actual results. This is all familiar territory for all of us, right? If you've been even, writing lab reports from the time we were kids, this is how they're written. But significance and innovation are a little more salesy. These were sections that came about. Zerhouni, the director before Francis Collins, was the one who implemented these changes right around 2007. And they're a little tricky because this is unfamiliar territory, and it takes some time for grantees to learn how to write these sections. And it's always after the Ames page, it's always those are the sections that I ask grantees to show me first, because they usually require multiple revisions. So significance is really how are you going to advance the field? How are you going to improve the lives of patients or address a gap in the literature, or address a clinical need, an unmet clinical need. It's that kind of issue. And you also deal with your rigor of prior research in that section. Innovation is, what is it about your study design that's new, better, or different than what other people have done in the past? So maybe it is that all the past studies have been cross-sectional and yours will be longitudinal. So you'll get a new type of data to wrap your head around the problem a little better. Maybe prior studies had low sample sizes and yours is going to have a very large sample size. Maybe other studies have had lacked diversity, or didn't stratify on outcome measures having to do with race, ethnicity, or sex, and yours will. Your sample size will be large enough to do that, and you're going to recruit a diverse population. Maybe you have some novel cell line or technology that other people don't have access to. Maybe you have a long-standing electronic medical record database that is unique in the countries, and it allows you to ask questions that other people can't. These would be some of, or a unique biorepository that other people don't have access to. Or your medical center is able to recruit a large number of people with a rare type of cancer or whatever it is. So these are some of the things that would qualify as innovations, because the structure of the project is better than what's been done before. Therefore, when you write it up, you've got to give that context. So probably the number one mistake I see in the drafts of innovation sections is that people simply provide a laundry list of what they're going to do. They simply restate it. We're going to recruit people, a diverse population. We're going to use this tool. We're going to access this biorepository. It's not enough. You've got to give reviewers a context. So you want to say, we are going to recruit a diverse population. Research that's gone before us has primarily dealt with, a white population. We're going to use this novel tool. Other studies that people have done before us used this tool, which had certain shortcomings, and our novel tool is going to address those shortcomings. We're going to use this novel biorepository. And the advantage of that is that people who have used other types of cell lines or samples in the past were limited by X, Y, and Z. And our biorepository has advantages in the following ways. So you've got to create the context by which reviewers can assess the innovation of something. You can't just restate what you're going to do and hope that the reviewers are inside your head and know why it's innovative. You've got to show them why it's innovative by setting it against the context of the field, by providing the competitive advantage. Okay, so hopefully that is clear to people. I have another question here. A PO agreed to speak to me about my specific aims. What should I expect in this meeting? What can I ask her or not ask about? Okay, so everybody on this call has access to the library of courses. In Master the R Series Part 1 preparation, I walk you through painstakingly, step by step, how to prepare for the call with the program officer and what kinds of questions to ask. There are at least 10 slides on this. There are several templates of lists of questions you can email the program officer, what not to ask them, and lists of questions to ask about on the call. The key highlights here, and I'm going to speak generally and not the specific set of circumstances for this grantee. You want to ask about the optimal funding opportunity announcement for your stage of your career and for this stage of the project. So it's two different things, right? So you may have a developed project, but maybe you as a grantee do not have enough publications to be competitive on an R01 or even in the R series. So, given you the stage of your career and how far advanced this project is in terms of preliminary data, what would be the optimal FOA? And do they have a topic-specific FOA that might fit this particular project? You want to ask about your ESI status. Make sure that you have a clear understanding of exactly when your ESI status expires, because that will affect your choices as well. You definitely have certain options open to you as an ESI person that, for example, the CATS ESI or the DP2 or the DP5, those are mechanisms that are only open to people with an ESI. And depending on when the expiration is, you may not want to waste precious ESI time applying for a case submission. You may want to go right into the R series and make sure that you're getting multiple submissions in while your ESI status is still active. You definitely want to talk to them about study section options. I reviewed that in detail at the beginning of the call. So once you've gone through your CSR ART search and you've gone and looked up those study sections in the reporter website and had a conversation with mentors and colleagues and narrowed the list down to like 2 or 3 different study sections, ask the program officer, here's my aims page. I'm considering these 2 study sections. This is what I understand to be the pros and cons of each of these. What are your thoughts, giving your knowledge about your recent knowledge about this study section and their potential scientific biases? So these are some of the questions that you would ask. You should definitely prepare for that call and have your questions, do your homework so you have a couple of study sections to discuss. But again, there's a detailed treatment of this in Master the R Series Part 1 preparation. If you don't have time to watch the course, you can just go look at the manual or the slides and just flip through to the place where this is answered. Okay, and in our last few minutes, does ESI status end on a specific date or just end at the end of the month noted in comments? It's a specific date. It is a month, day, year. So, and this matters. And I'm sure everybody's sick of hearing me say this because I keep talking about this in every format I have. But I had a grantee, this is like news to me, I learned it last fall. I had a grantee last fall whose ESI status expired on September 28th, 2021. And he said to the program officer, oh, well, I guess I can't apply for my October 5th R01 with ESI status. And the program officer said, oh, yes, you can. Just upload on the day before your ESI expires. So instead of uploading on October 5th or 4th or 3rd, he uploaded on like September 26th. And so not only did he get ESI status for that application, as long as he resubmits within 13 months of the original submission date, the A1 will also be reviewed as ESI. So it's really important to figure out the exact day, month, and year that your ESI status expires, and to determine with the program officer if you are eligible for any extensions for things like parental leave or COVID-related research interruptions. Even a few months can sometimes help get you one more cycle on which to submit. So that's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you all for attending. I hope that your grant writing is going well. It's May 18th, so I'm sure there are a lot of frantic, stressed people out there. I feel your pain. I'm there too. We're all working on these grant applications together. So keep sending me your questions. We'll meet again. I think the last meeting for this series is on June 1st. Keep emailing us your questions or ask them live here. If you want to email them, just send them to meg@megbouvier.com or ask them live here. Thank you for attending, and I wish you all the best of luck. Take care.